This is S-4! Sit back, relax, and keep your eyes to the skies.
Greetings, folks, and welcome to S-4, where we talk about the serious issues involving paranormal and current events, coming to you live from the S-4 headquarters in the heart of the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, here in our studio in Concrete, Washington. So tonight it is November 8th. We have a special guest, Mike Beaver, on the show with us. He is an experiencer of a lifetime of paranormal experiences, as well as supernatural, and the author of multiple books on many different topics. How you doing tonight, Mike?
I'm doing great. Yourself?
It's cold. It's very cold.
It is a lot.
And it's hard to believe.
Big baby.
Hey, well, I am. Come on now. Yeah.
It's 69 where I'm at, so it's not.
It's what, 37, 36 here, and supposed to snow tomorrow?
It's still 37 because it hasn't changed.
37 still? Okay.
Yeah, it's not dropping. Calm down.
How are you doing tonight, Tim? No, we got Tim in the chat room, our faithful listener of many. So we're going to get right into it because I know you have a ton of experiences and stories to talk about tonight, Mike. So where did you start?
Well,
and really, what part of it do you want to start with? It's totally up to you.
I should probably give an introduction to who I am first.
Yep.
So on my website, which is profoundstates.com, if you go there, there's no www, just straight profoundstates.com. On the right side, you'll see my name. Below that, you'll see a big fat link underneath my name, which is my book. It's a very long title, and somebody, if they want, they can right-click and open that link in a different tab. Below that, there's a biography. So if you look at my biography, you'll know that I make my living, well, I'll just tell you. I make my living as a computer geek. My clients include the CIA, the FBI, the Library of Congress, many Department of Defense components, Army, Air Force, Marine Corps. And two highlights of my career. I was in the war room in Kabul, Afghanistan, that Petraeus, the 4-star, got his daily briefing through that room. Behind me, you had a Raytheon board with probably 30 to 50 live drone feeds. And then up on the big wall where he would see it, you had 4 live drone feeds, about 100 inches side to side, projected from a second-story projector. You had 4 of those, and then my application, which was in the center. And the other thing I did in the IT world that's of note is I worked with a vendor, and together we stopped a congressional investigation, just the two of us. So I am also used to be a hypnotherapist, and I worked in the as a stuntman in the motion picture industry for over a decade. I'm an amateur ufologist, a contactee. I've never been abducted, so I'm just a contactee. I only have one book, and it's not yet published, so I'm sort of an author wannabe. So if you go to my bio, you can also see my movie bio, and there's all kinds of things in there. I won't go over the boring parts of my life, but that's who I am. And so I was once a member of the Houston Stuntmen's Association. Most dangerous stunt I ever did was a flying sidekick off the top of a 2-story racquetball court in West Texas. So let's get on with the show. So here comes my wife. She wants to be on the show too, I think.
Never mind.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so she went back out the door. Anyway, so where should we start? So I've had three close encounters with craft, 2 close encounters with beings. I have 2 attaching spirits that are attached to me. One that sits in my head, one that sits in my back. They are demonic. I believe that most people have attaching spirits, 2 or more, and we'll get into all that. But I've been in like 4 or 5 situations where I've seen other people's attach. Well, I've only seen one attaching spirit, but I've seen symptoms of attaching spirits about 4 times. And so, as far as where I got started, I don't really know whether the paranormal stuff happened first or the alien stuff, but I'm pretty sure it was the paranormal. But it was all around the age. I started. All right. So first, I should explain how I got my attaching spirits. I started smoking pot at the age of 16. I stayed high morning, noon, and night for 18 years. And that's how I got my attaching spirit. Anybody who smokes pot a lot, or cigarettes, or drinks a lot of alcohol, or does any kind of drugs a lot has attaching spirits. I think most people have 2 or more. And so I got the way I found out how I got my attaching spirits, my wife and I were living in Portland, Oregon, and I was trying to figure out how to get rid of my attaching spirits, and I was reading through the penny newspaper, and I saw a little ad for a healer, and I don't know why it caught my eye, but I called this lady up, and she said, "Yeah, come on down." She was in Southern Oregon, living in a double wide on a piece of grass out in the middle of nowhere, and my wife and I walked into her double wide, and she pointed her and her husband were sitting on the couches, and she pointed her finger at me and said, "You're healed." And I looked at her, and in my mind, I was like, "You're an idiot," you know? And so I didn't say that to her, fortunately, but I was nice to her and kept a good face while my wife and I were there for a couple of hours, 3 or 4 hours, and then we went home back to Portland. Anyway, 2 to 6 weeks later, she called me and said, I talked to my psychic friend about your problem, and she said you got it through smoking, but I didn't see you smoke. Do you smoke? And I was like, not what you're thinking. Your friend didn't tell you what I was smoking, but I've only smoked 2 cigarettes in my entire life, but I stayed high for 18 years, and yes, I smoked pot. So that's how I found out how I got my attaching spirits. So anyway, I can go through each of my close encounters if you want, moment by moment. It takes quite a while to tell my first one, or we can just gloss over it.
That's okay. We talk aliens and UFOs and stuff on the show all the time, so by all means, let's hear about your contacts.
All right. Well, the first close encounter I had, I was, oddly enough, coming home from a party. I had gotten high at the party, but by the time I got home, I was very much down, and I was sort of below the state of depression. I basically was kind of paralyzed in my car, not because somebody had paralyzed me, but because I just didn't have enough energy to move. And so I'm sitting there in the car, my Pontiac Le Mans, an inclined driveway in my mother's driveway near the northwest corner of Clay and Gessner in Houston, Texas. And I'm sitting there thinking about killing myself. And I'm thinking about leaving the planet, but I wasn't thinking about aliens. So I guess somebody picked up the fact that I was thinking about leaving the planet. And so I saw in my mind's eye a ring of lights. It was a visual image, but it was in the middle of my head, and I've never seen anything visually in the middle of my head while I was awake ever, and not before or since. And what had happened was it came on for like a quarter of a second, and it turned very slow, just for like the quarter of a second where it was on, just long enough where I could see movement. It was just a ring of lights, and I was like, what's that? Disappears. It reappears in my head, does this like 3 or 4 times. And each time it's on long enough just for me to see the left to right movement. And after it does that 3 or 4 times, I'm like, what did I just see? What is that? And I didn't think of it as being a alien craft or anything. I didn't know what it was. To me, it was just a ring of lights, and that's all I thought of it. And so after thinking about it for a minute or two, I just dismissed it and forgot about it, or not forgot about it, but I just dismissed it and stopped thinking about it. Went back to thinking about killing myself. And I started having a dialogue in my head. It was like I was talking to myself. I didn't hear any special voices. I said, I really would like to leave this planet. And my other half of my brain, or the aliens, or somebody said, where would you go to leave this planet? And I said, I would go anywhere to leave this planet. And I came, the other side of my brain said, or the aliens or something said, would you go to hell to get away from this planet? And I said, I would go anywhere to leave this planet, and not thinking rationally, And so if you just thought about that logic for a moment, you'd think, oh, those are demons. But later on, when I tell you my second count, you might think differently. Anyway, so at some point, just to speed up the story, eventually I got out of the car. It took me like 30 minutes just to get out of the car. And so eventually I got out of the car. The car door was all the way open to where, where it locks open. And the windows roll down. I turn around facing south, and I look up in the sky, and what I saw in my head was sitting in the sky. Basically, it was a ring of lights going around a black hole with nothing else. And the first thought that came to my mind was, I thought I was hallucinating. So even though I went around for like a year asking them to come down and take me away, I have a large part of me that's also very skeptical. Mm-hmm. So anyway, thinking it's hallucination, I think, well, if I look away and do other things, it'll go away because I'm just hallucinating, right? So I turn around, I roll up my window, I lock my door, or I get in the car, I use my knees and I walk on my knees over to the opposite window door, roll up my window, lock my car, start backing out, look over to the left, look at the digital clock in my car. It says 11:00. This is Saturday night, October 3rd, 1980, at the northwest corner of Clay and Gessner. And then I continue backing out, stand up, roll up the window, the other window, lock that door, back up a little more, shut the door, turn around and look up, and it's still sitting there. I expected it to be gone by now, thinking it was a hallucination, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still sitting there. It's turning very slowly from left to right. It's vibrating like a piece on a lathe that's off center. And And I'm like, okay, I guess maybe you're real. And I said, I don't remember what I said in my head, but what it did was it started dropping very slowly, and it dropped like about 2 degrees in the sky, very slowly, and then stopped and paused, and then it rose twice as high as it dropped, where it was 2 degrees above where it started. It went up very, very slowly and stopped, and then it very slowly went back down to its original position. Now, I'm looking at it from the side, so I'm seeing 3 lights, then 4 lights, then 3 lights, then 4 lights, and it keeps going back and forth between 3 and 4
What colors
lights.
were they?
Mostly white, but they had tinges of other color, but they were primarily white. But they weren't projecting out like a flashlight. They were self-contained light, and there was some other colors in there mixed in with the white, but I couldn't really. There was no predominant other color besides white, and so anyway, there were 8 equidistant lights, but I don't know there's 8 yet because I haven't got to that point where I could see all 8 lights. I can only see 3 and 4, depending on the position of it, because I'm looking at it from the side, mostly from the side. And if I stick my thumb out, outstretched all the way as far as my arm will go, that would be about 1.5 times the width of this craft. It's a little bit less than my thumb width outstretched. And it's above the houses. I'm facing south. I'm off the street that if you run south, that's Gessner, and the street that runs east and west, I think that's Clay. And anyway, so I say, because it starts dropping, I think they're going to land, right? As it's dropping, I'm like, oh, it's going to land. And then when it goes up, I'm like, oh, it's taking off, right? It's going away as it's going up, right? So I'm thinking it's going to land, and it's going to leave. And so I put the two together logically, and I'm like, oh, you're going to land and then you're going to leave. Oh, you want to take me with you. That's the logic. I came up with that logic based on the fact that they looked like they were going to land, and then they looked like they were going to leave. So I figured, well, they're going to land, then they're going to leave. Oh, I just kind of threw those two pieces of what they did together and logically came to that conclusion. And so I said in my head to the craft at that point, I said, okay, I'm willing to go. What next? How do we do this? And what it does in response is it moves at a 45-degree angle it's still spinning slowly from left to right. It's still vibrating like a piece on a lathe that's off center. And it starts moving without changing the angle of the craft. It still stays level, but the craft moves at a 45-degree angle up to the right. And it goes maybe 4 degrees up in the sky and gets to a point and then moves down at a 45-degree angle down to the point where it started, and then it moves up, and it keeps doing this sawtooth movement very slowly up to a point, very slowly down to a point, and it does this all the way to the right, which is west, all the way out over this field. And you could have taken a ruler and drawn a line in the sky all the way across the highest edge points and the lowest edge points, because they were at the exact same height and the exact same depth. So it went up to the same height and went down to the same depth each time it moved, and there was no transition between going up and down. It was like perfect. It's like it had perfect control, like it had no weight of any kind. And so it got all the way out in the field, and using that same very slow sawtooth movement, it came all the way back in front of me. Now, it took a long time for it to get all the way out in the field because it did all that very slowly, and it took a long time for it to come back. By the time it cut back, in front of me. I'm like, okay, so you want to go out into the field so that we can go away. Okay, so I kind of put all that together and realized it wants me to go out in the field, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, let's do it. So I walked down my mother's inclined driveway to the middle of the street to where the two slabs of concrete, one half of the street is one slab of concrete, and the other half of the street is another slab of concrete. And they meet in the middle, and they're not perfectly joined in the middle, but pretty close to perfect. And so I walked to that little edge right in the middle of the street, turn to my right, and I start walking west down the middle of Colony Court, which is the street my mother lived on. And so as I'm moving, I'm look up at it, and it's paralleling me, staying at the exact same height and distance as it originally was, staying with me the whole way I'm walking. And I don't want it to gain control over me, so I'm, looking around at other things and then looking back up at it and looking around at other things. And I kind of vary what I'm looking at so that I don't get, so whatever it is doesn't like take me over or whatever. So occasionally I look back up at it and then I keep walking. And when I get to the end of Colony Court where it dead ends or butts up against the street that allows you entrance into this housing complex, where those two streets join, I look back. At that moment, I'm not looking at the craft, so I look back up at the craft, and it's relatively similar position as it originally was, but it's higher in the sky and maybe slightly a bit closer. So I'm now seeing it from underneath. And so instead of seeing 3 and 4 lights back and forth, I'm seeing all 8 lights, equidistant lights on the edge of what looks like a black hole. I can't see a surface. There's no moon out that night, so there's not enough light for me to see if there's a surface or not. And for all I know, it could have been a black hole, literally. And because I can't see where the craft ends and the night sky starts except for the lights. Those are the only thing that define the craft. Otherwise, it's a black hole. Mm. So, but as it's sitting there, it slows its vibration, and what it does is it drops its front and lifts its back like it's pivoting on an imaginary line going down the center of the craft. So it dips the front and lifts the back, and then it does the opposite. The back drops and the front lifts up, and it keeps doing that like there's some kind of pivot point in the middle of the craft. And while it's doing that, it's still spinning, so it looks like a moving infinity sign. Okay, and when I'm looking at this moving infinity sign, I'm thinking, well, maybe that's where the Egyptians got the infinity sign from. So it's after it does that 3 or 4 times, it slows its movement until it goes just slightly beyond level, and then does that again back in the opposite direction, and then again until it's back to where it's level. So, and then I just continue walking out into this field west, and I'm not looking at it anymore. And I'm looking around the stars, and all the stars are normal. They're not doing anything strange. But anyway, I get across this street that the Colony Court butts up against, and I get into this field. I step up over the curb into the field, and then I keep walking like maybe 20 foot into this field, and then I look back at this craft, and it's back to where it originally was, at a position on the side or sideways position rather than under. I'm looking at it from the side rather than underneath, but basically in the relatively same position as it originally was. So hold on.
Did any beings come out of it, or was there just a craft in the sky?
No, you'll get all of it. Here, hold on. I just had to take a drink of my water.
Okay.
Okay, so I keep walking, right? I'm get about 20, 30 foot out in this field, and it's paralleling me still, just like it was all this way. It's still doing the same thing. And I stop, and it keeps going west, and it goes maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds, 15 seconds or 20 seconds further beyond where I'm standing. And then it stops, and then it comes back in front of me. And I say to this craft, or the beings in the craft, mentally I say, I don't mind leaving with you. That's fine. I'm ready to leave the planet. But I want you to come down here. I don't want to go further out in the field to leave. I want somebody to see you when we leave. I don't want to make this like just me leaving. I want people to know, I want somebody possibly to see the craft and know that you're real when we leave. And mentally, it was like I was talking to myself. I didn't hear any special voices, but it said to me, they're not ready yet. And basically, I was just using the speech patterns in my brain because I didn't hear any special voices. So when it said they said they're not ready yet, I said mentally, well, maybe I'm not ready yet also. So in that moment, I decided not to go, or not to leave with them. So the craft, what it did was it dropped maybe 1 or 2 degrees, probably just 1 degree in the sky. And as it did that, it slowed its vibration to where it was no longer vibrating. It's still spinning left to right. And if I got underneath it, let's see, it would be clockwise. So anyway, and so it made a full rotation, and there was a black dot where there was a light. It's like they turned off one of the lights. And I could actually, it doesn't make a lot of sense because you have a black dot sitting on a black surface. So I should have not been able to see anything, but I could actually see the dot itself, the black dot. For some reason, I could see it moving across the black surface where they turned off one of the lights. And it made a full rotation all the way around. The black dot was there again. And then there was a second black dot behind it. They turned off 2 lights with that rotation. And with each rotation, they turned off another light and went around 8 times. And when the last light, with each rotation, they kept turning off a light. And when it got the 8th rotation and the last light was turned off, it was no longer sitting there. It was gone.
I got to break in here. I got to ask you a question.
Yeah.
If you were ready to leave this world completely, leave everything behind, why would it matter if anyone else saw it?
I don't know. Maybe I still cared about humans or something. So maybe I just didn't want to be here. But I still cared about it. Go ahead.
When someone's ready to actually leave this world, there is nothing else. There is no reason to leave anything behind. Your thoughts are that no one matter. You don't matter to anyone else. Is it not?
Yeah, well, all I can tell you is that what I was thinking. I can't give you the logic behind it all. I mean, I'm not going to explain my own thoughts. That's what I can explain it. What I was thinking, and that's just what it was. That's what I was thinking. I wanted somebody to see us leave because I believed in extraterrestrials, but I thought this world was so boring they would never come here, and so part of me wanted people to see them, to believe in them too, and then I would go. So anyway, on with the story. Let's see, where was I? So as soon as it disappeared, you could see there was 3 stars that were perfectly level with each other, and they were within the space that was sitting. So the 3 stars that were directly behind this craft were not visible until it disappeared. Once it disappeared, I could see these 3 stars behind it. So anyway, the next thing I noticed, I'm looking around at the stars, and are you guys Star Trek fans?
Yes, I am. Star Trek.
So do you remember the original series?
Yep.
Okay. Do you remember the episode where the 2 guys are half white and half black, and they're constantly fighting because one of them is black on the opposite side of the other one?
Yes.
Okay. So do you remember the scene in there where they're fighting, and you have 2 different universes that are changing position with each other? It's like their battle is allowing one universe to take over, then the other universe goes away, and universes keep changing, swapping back and forth. Do you remember that scene?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I was seeing in the sky was something similar to that, but on from a different angle or a different scale. So that night, I saw there was more stars out than any night I've ever been outside in my entire life. That includes, and I've lived in a lot of different places. And so I've never seen more stars out than that one night. So within the space of $1, a silver dollar, there was like 10 to 15 or more stars within that much space all across the sky. Okay, and that much, that much space, the space of a silver dollar, there was all the stars within that space would go off at the same time, literally blink out, and another different set of stars within that same space would come on and take their place, and they would go back and forth swapping. Okay, this was occurring in the space of a silver dollar, right? Then there was silver dollar that much space with the stars all going off at the same time, independent of all the other spaces. As far as I could see, this was happening, right? So you'd have...
Okay. So you say, okay, so there's like a space the size of a silver dollar, like if you were to hold it to your face or if you were to hold it away from you?
If you hold it away from me.
Okay, so there's a space the size of a silver dollar where the lights, or the stars, excuse me, were blinking in of existence and out of existence.
Okay, maybe kind of like a craft was actually blocking them moving.
Right. That's what I was... And
well, you had all those stars go out, and you had another set of stars come on, right? Now, this was happening within that same amount of space, independently of every other space, in every direction. As far as I could see, I looked around in every direction. It was happening as far as I could see in every direction. Okay? Every space the size of a silver dollar, all the stars in that space would go off, would blink out at the same exact second, and a different set of stars would...
Okay, so is there more than one space the size... Like, if the entire sky was lit up, you're talking separate, different spaces the size of a dollar all over it.
It's every space that size, it's occurring independently of every other space that size, as far as I can see.
Okay.
In every direction.
So it's like a grid, and pieces on space A are going out, while pieces on space B are coming on.
No. Let's just take one space at a time. You've got one silver dollar space. All the stars in that space turn. It's like something blocks them out, and they just turn off. And another set within that same space comes on in their place. They're going back and forth, right?
Okay.
Now this is happening independently within every space that size, as far as you can see in every direction. They're all independent. All the spaces are independent of each other. but all the stars are going off within each space at the same time. It's kind of hard to visualize unless you were there. But all the stars within that space would go off. A different set would come on at the same time in that same space. Mm-hmm. And then, but it was happening independently on that independent, every silver dollar space across the entire sky was happening independently of every other space. And
right, but what I'm trying to figure out, what I'm trying to visualize here, I guess, is so if you got the entire sky, you got silver dollar spaces basically touching each other, and like if you were to set 100 pennies next to each other end on end.
Yeah.
And then you got independent within that line or within that grid of pennies, spaces going in and out of having stars to not having stars.
No, it's not having stars to not having stars. It's like one set of stars goes out, and as those stars go out, a different set of stars within the same space take their place.
Okay, so it would be like if you were staring up at the Big Dipper and all of a sudden it went out and it became Cancer.
Right.
Okay. Cool. I get. Okay, that makes way more sense. I'm sorry. I was trying to visualize what you were.
It's hard to visualize unless you were actually there. But if you just think of one silver dollar space of stars, all going off, and another within that same space, a different set of stars coming on as those go off. Mm-hmm. And they're swapping back and forth within that space. Then duplicate that in every direction, and every space they're all doing it independently of each other. There's no connection between them.
So it's almost like world within world or portal view, but of several different spaces and several different times at the same time. I
don't know. I don't know how to logically describe it other than what I saw. Okay. So anyway, it was kind of playing on my head a little bit because it was almost like making me dizzy. I wasn't really dizzy, but it was like almost like dizzy, It was just kind of playing on my head. So I kneeled down to my knees and closed my eyes for like 20 or 30 seconds or maybe even a minute. And then I opened them back up, stood back up, looked around, still doing it, right? So I walk back across this field at an angle towards my mother's house, and I'm looking around at the stars the whole time, and it's doing it the whole time I'm walking in every direction. And I walk over the curb of the road and into the road and across the road that goes into the complex, and then once I get on the other side of the road, I'm on Colony Court, and I'm walking down that road, and I look down and I keep looking back up, and it's still doing it. I'm not staring at it the whole time, but I keep looking back up, and every time I look up in every direction, it's still doing it as far as I can see. And when I get all the way to my mother's driveway, the edge of her driveway, I stop at the edge, and I'm looking up at the moment. I look back up and look around. All the stars are back to normal. So I walk up the incline of her driveway and then into the house, and I go upstairs, and I wake her up and tell her about my close encounter. She thinks I'm crazy, or temporarily crazy or whatever, and because she has no reference to aliens. So then I go to my room and I think about everything, and I'm at this point I'm kind of regretting that I didn't leave, and so I start thinking about how first thing I think of is how to find out whether they actually that was real or not. I'm still trying to decide whether it's real or not. And so I call I don't remember if I did it. This was like a Saturday night. I think I waited till the next day. On Sunday, next day on Sunday, I called Ellington Air Force Base, which is a military airfield, military air base that's near Houston. I call Ellington, and the guy picks up the phone, and I say, "Have you guys seen anything weird in the sky last night?" And the guy goes, "This is the fire department. The switchboard to get into the tower isn't open on Sunday, so you have to call back on Monday to get into the tower to find out if anybody saw anything." So okay, so I hang up. I called. This is like a Sunday. The encounter was on Saturday night, October 3rd, 1980, and the next day I call them. That's a Sunday. So I wait till the next day, Monday, and I call them Ellington again, and immediately the call goes straight into the tower. There's no switchboard or anything. And the guy picks it up. He's sitting in the tower. I said, did you guys see anything weird Saturday night? And he goes, no. And he says, where were you? And I told him where I was. And he goes, hold on. And he sits the phone down. I think he got up and walked over to the guy whose radar covered my area. And I expect him to come back and say, no, we haven't seen anything. And what did you see? And he comes back picks up the phone. He says, I'm sorry, but we can't talk about the subject at this time. And I was like, really? And I said, I thought he was like just BSing me, trying to get a laugh or something, And I said, you didn't see anything. You're just saying that to get a laugh or something, right? And he goes, no, we're not allowed to talk about this subject at this time. He repeats it. Something, it wasn't exactly those words, but it's very close to that.
So do you think it was a governmental craft, or do you think it was off-world?
I think it was off-world.
Okay.
So anyway, hold on a second. I gotta let my dog out. He's crying. Get out the door. Hold on. Go. Please go. My wife puts him in the room, and then he wants out. So anyway, okay. So after that, I'm kind of wishing that I had gone with them. So I'm trying to think of when they might return, and so I thought about the fact that this was on October 3rd, 1980. So the first space shuttle launch was on or about April 13th, 1981, 6 months later. I knew that the shuttle was about to launch for the first time, and I figured the aliens might return to see the first reusable spacecraft launched from Earth. So I think about, well, how can I get on base to see the first space shuttle launch? And I thought about my dad. He had a pre-production Corvette that was built before the first fiberglass vet was ever produced. He had a pre-production fiberglass vet. He would drive it around, and cops would stop him and give him tickets, even when he wasn't speeding, just so they could see the car. And they would ask him, what is it? Tell us about the car and that sort of thing. So anyway, I thought about that, and there was Yamaha was coming out with a Virago 750. And so I figured if I got one of those and took it down to Cocoa Beach and parked it on the beach, somebody would see the motorcycle and offer to take me on base, and then I could go on base and see the aliens again, right? Meet the aliens a second time. So one night I was coming home in my newly reconditioned Pontiac Le Mans, and it was like brand new. It had a new top on it. It had new interior. It was like brand new. So anyway, I was coming home one night, and I liked hot dogs. There's a y'all know who Der Wiener Schnitzel is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there was a Der Wiener Schnitzel not too far from my house on Gessner, and I stopped there to get a hot three chili dogs, and all I had in my pocket was a $20 bill, and they didn't have enough change to change a 20, which is ridiculous, and so I had to go somewhere to get change for the hot dogs. So right across the street there was a porn shop. So I drove right across. I just took a left and went across the street and went into this porn shop. When I parked, instead of parking and turning off my car and locking it, going inside, I was in too big of a hurry. So I parked the car parallel to where, instead of parking it like you would normally park a car in a parking space, I parked parallel to the sidewalk in front of the porn joint, and I jumped out of the car, and I left the keys in the car with the car running, right? Really stupid. And I went around the car, went inside, and I handed the guy 20. I said, "Need change for 20." And he thought I was like wanting to check out his porn, so he starts counting out ones. 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, oh my God, I just need a 10 and 2 5s, please. And so he gives me 10 and 2 5s, and I run out of the porn shop, and my car is backed in with a guy with long hair sitting in the driver's seat. I run around to the left side, grab the door, jerk it open, and as I jerk the door open, he's already got it in gear. He just steps on the gas, and he's gone. He takes off. Never see the car again. I never see the car again. So the insurance company pays me like $1,400 for the car. I use the money to buy a very old used Kawasaki 750, and then I take that motorcycle, and whatever cash I have left, and I trade those in on a Virago 750. And I take the bike down to Florida, park it on Cocoa Beach. Guy walks over, is checking it out, has it passed to get on base, and he offers me to take me on base, just like I envisioned. So I'm following him in his station wagon, and we park, and I park just outside the gate at Cape Canaveral, and get into his station wagon. It's a father. He has 3 kids in the car: a young girl, a younger boy, and a really young boy that's maybe 4 or 5. And so, besides the 3 kids, he's got one of his employees, 18 to 23-year-old German kid, sitting in the passenger seat in the front with him. He's driving, and we go to see the space shuttle launch. And I don't know if you guys remember, but the first space shuttle launch was canceled. The launch was stopped at about T-minus 10 seconds, and then they held the launch for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then they scrubbed the launch. And they said, this was on a Friday, and they said, we're going to relaunch on a Monday, 3 days later, before Monday, Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, 3 days later. And so I was, as I'm leaving with this gentleman, he says, well, we're not going back to Houston. We came to see the launch. We came this far. We're not going to return to Houston and not see the launch, or not. I don't remember where he said he lived. He wasn't from Houston like I was. And so he said, I'm not going home before I see the launch. We'll just go down to Daytona and then come back Monday. And he said, you can come with us to Daytona, and there'll be a lot of pretty ladies out on the beach, and we'll just hang out on the beach until Monday, and we'll come back and see the relaunch on Monday. So I do that. I follow him in his station wagon with his kids and his employee from Cape Canaveral to Daytona. And somewhere along that path, I'll lose them. And then so I have to go driving down Daytona, the beach, because I know that's where they'll be, on the beach somewhere. And so I start driving down Daytona Beach. It's a really long beach. And eventually I find the family. And then from there we go to their hotel. And I had to stay awake from Houston. I had to stay awake 2 or 3 days in a row to get to from Houston to Cape Canaveral or Cocoa Beach in time to see the launch. So I've been awake for 2 or 3 days. So I go into his hotel room and I just sleep for the next 3 days, and just constantly sleeping the whole time. And anyway, on Monday morning at 5 in the morning, 4:30 or whatever it was, we get back in the. They get back in the car, and I follow them back to Cape Canaveral. And once again, we park outside the base, or I park outside the base on my motorcycle, get in the station wagon, and go back on base with them. And so the second time we're on base, going towards the launch site, I have the feeling to tell these people about the encounter which I just told you guys about. Mm-hmm. So I tell them the whole story. Right? It takes a long time to tell it, and the cars are going very slowly, like 5 miles an hour, maybe bumper to bumper, not bumper to bumper, but maybe a car length between each car. It's like really dark outside. There's no moon. There's stars are out, but there's no moon. And all the land on Cape Canaveral is like, it's just causeway. It's a lot of it. There's a certain amount of it that's solid land, but a lot of it is just marsh. And so, if you ever drive off the road into the water, you get eaten by alligators or crocodiles. So anyway, after I get through telling them about my first close encounter, I utter the last word about what happened. And as I say the last word, as it comes out of my mouth, the German kid, who's an employee, sitting in the passenger seat in the front, I'm in the back. There's a little boy and girl to my left, and the youngest boy is behind me. So as I utter the last word of my story, the one I just told you guys, the German kid in the passenger seat, he laughs at me. And I'm like, in my mind, I say to God, God, I wish you would show them what I saw. And within about 2 seconds of me making that wish in my head, I got my wish, because way out in front of the car, there was what looked like the same as the first craft. Looked exactly the same. The only difference was it wasn't vibrating. It was slowly.
So through all this, did you ever have any Men in Black experiences?
I've never had one.
Okay.
So anyway, we're kind of a little further away from it than where I was when I had my first sighting of what looked like the same craft. And we're getting closer and closer to it. We're on a left curving causeway road with water on both sides. And when we get to as soon as this thing appears, I don't see it appear, nor does anybody else. It's just there, and we notice it after it's sitting there. And the German kid looks at the driver and the father and says, maybe that's what he saw. And the father says, yeah, maybe that is what he saw. And so they both acknowledge that they're seeing the craft. Mm-hmm. But from that moment forward, it's like they don't care anymore. It's like one minute they're seeing it, the next minute they don't care. So the moment this thing appears, the kids who were all looking around, checking everything out, as soon as this thing appears, it's like somebody shot them with a freeze ray. They're not moving a muscle, no eye movement, nothing. They're absolutely frozen. All 3 kids. The adults in the front seat are still animated, but they no longer care that it's up there. They're not looking, they're not staring at it, they're not gawking at it. They haven't moved their bodies in any way to look at it. They don't care about it. They acknowledge its presence, and then 10 seconds later, they don't care. Okay, so they're no longer even looking at it, but they're still animated, right? So I'm checking the thing out, and I'm watching all the people in the car, and eventually, after it takes a little while because we're a little further from it, but at some point we actually drive under it, and it's sitting about 30 to 50 foot off the Causeway Road, right in the middle of the road, directly. If I had gotten out of the car, I'm pretty sure I could have thrown a rock and hit this thing. It was so low, and if it didn't hit it, the rock would have come real close to it because it was very low. And so when we drove under it, the window on the right side is curved out. So I stick the top of my head against the window on the right side on the door that's next to me, and I look up as we're directly underneath this thing, and I can see the edge of it turning. Okay, even though the window's closed, I can still see the edge of it. And so we keep going under it until we're beyond it, and I look back, and it's still spinning behind us, and nobody in the car, none of the adults, turn back and look at this thing. They don't care that it even exists anymore. And so, and we keep driving away from it, and all these other cars are driving underneath it, and not a single car stops to get out and look at this thing. And so eventually we go around the Causeway Road far enough to where the trees block out the position where it's sitting. And that's the end of that encounter. So,
okay, and on that, we do need to go to our first top of the hour break. And when we come back, we will hear about your second encounter.
Oh, that was both of them.
That
First
was
and
Oh, that was both of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back. Here is Wildfire.
You are listening to S4 on Spreaker.com.
Break. You're going down.
Now with your host, Eric Cooper.
And welcome back to S4, where we have Mike Beaver and his contact experiences. And we are going to... I wanted to ask, though, have you ever worked with abductees on the hypnotherapy side?
Yeah, one.
And did you want to talk about that one or no?
We can. So she was using a breeder for the Greys. She figured out she had 55 offspring, which is, I thought that was a lot, but since then I've found out that that's not actually atypical.
It depends. It does depend on the lifespan of the abductee. There's supposed to be 3 different phases that they go through based on the age of the abductee. From the experience we've had working with abductees, anyway. I think it depends on the race that's doing the abducting, because it depends on the gray. So, how many races have you dealt with? Both
directly?
Both in your encounters that you've had, and with any abductees you work with.
Well, she's the only abductee I've ever worked with.
Okay.
I've been a ufologist my whole life, but I've never come across, I could name almost half a dozen people that you would know all their names because they're all famous as ufologists, but none of them have ever allowed me to regress any of their experiencers that they had contacts with. People in the ufology community tend to hold their experiencers very close to the vest and not let the information out. So they'll pick somebody like Yvonne Smith and use that one hypnotherapist, and everybody else will not get a chance. So I've only worked with the one client.
And I do think that's a disservice to the UFO community because, for two factors. One of the factors being that, none of the information, confidentiality aside, I get that, but the information in general doesn't get out, so you know what races are out there. We know there's at least 1,000 races that are either visiting the planet or some of them stay here. Now, what's your thoughts? I know you have had demon encounters as well. Do you see a difference between the alien races and demons?
Well, I don't think demons need craft to move around in. If you'll notice that on the second close encounter I had on Cape Canaveral base before this first space shuttle launch, the kids' minds were turned off. So the aliens were protecting the kids from an encounter they weren't prepared to see. Right. And I don't really think a kid seeing a craft up in the sky that far away, or even one closer to the car, is that traumatic. So I'm thinking they're more careful about the kids' minds than we humans would be. Mm-hmm. So that means that's a positive thing, and demons don't think positively. So, I don't think aliens are demons. I think there's a clear delineation. So.
Good. Yeah, because you get too many, and that's where I kind of shut off with some of them, because some of them do think aliens are demons. No, they're two different. In my opinion, they're two different species.
Well, I have 2 attaching spirits attached to my body. They are demonic, but I'm the only area there's only 2 areas I'm an expert in. One is the paranormal, because I've lived within the paranormal every day of my life. So I've got every day since I was like 18. So I've lived 41 years with the paranormal on a daily basis. So I'm an expert from a first-person perspective of that. And then the other one is attaching spirits, because of the fact that I've got them, I tend to research that area. So I have quite a bit of knowledge about what's going on in that field of removing attaching spirits from a non-religious perspective.
Right.
That's something we can get into if you want to. It's up to you.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about attaching spirits.
All right, so did I tell you about mine on the air, or was that before we got on the air?
That was before we got on the air.
There was a little bit on there in the very beginning, yeah. Okay,
so I started smoking pot at the age of 16. I smoked I stayed high morning, noon, and night for 18 years. And then I met my wife, and she wanted to run away to Oregon or run away to the Northwest. And so I ran away with her. We moved up to Federal Way, Washington, and at some point we moved up to Seattle. But in between there, we moved to Portland, and I lived in Portland with her. And there's a lot of stuff that happened in Portland. So one of the things that happened was I was looking for healers to help me get rid of my 2 attaching spirits. So I found this lady's ad in the penny papers and went down to Southern Oregon, and we walked into this lady's double wide, and she looked at me and pointed her finger at me and said, "You're healed." And I thought in my head, "You're an idiot." And I didn't say anything to her like that, but that's what I was thinking at the time. And so my wife and I were nice to the couple, and eventually went back to Portland from Southern Oregon, where she lived. She and her husband lived, and then she called me 3 to 6 weeks later and said she had talked to her psychic friend and asked her about my problem. And her psychic friend said, "I got my problem through smoking." But her friend didn't say smoking what. And so she assumed her friend was talking about cigarettes. So she said to me, "I didn't see you smoke. Do you smoke?" And I said, "Well, not cigarettes. I've only smoked 2 cigarettes in my whole life. But I stayed high morning, noon, and night for 18 years, from the age of 16 to the age of 34. And so, yes, I smoked continuously for 18 years. And so that's how I found out how I got my attaching spirits. So attaching spirits are like other problems that you have, but different. So let's say you have a headache and it's localized, like it's not spread out over your whole head. It's more localized. It's in one spot or in a small area, right? And then you stick your hand on that area and the headache goes away while your hand is there. And you take your hand off, it comes back. You put your hand on, it goes away. You take your hand off, it comes back. That's an attaching spirit. Now, let's say you have a sharp back pain and it moves around on your back. It doesn't stay in one spot. That's an attaching spirit. A normal back pain like slip disc or compressed joint or some torn ligament, whatever, that will stay in one spot. It will not move around. But attaching spirit will move around. So I've had 2 people that have seen my attaching spirits. There was one girl, I used to go over to her house. You remember Robert Monroe's Gateway Experience, Hemisync tapes that he had back? Do you remember who I'm talking about?
I'm not familiar with that one, I don't think.
Okay, so there was a guy named Robert Monroe, and he was funded by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. They founded, with DARPA's money, he founded the Monroe Institute. I used to live like within 2 hours of that institute up in Virginia, and people go to that institute and they spend like a huge sum of money, and they teach you how to get out of your body using hemispheric synchronization.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know what hemispheric synchronization is?
Is that like remote viewing?
No. So hemispheric synchronization is when you play one tone in one ear and you play a different tone in the other ear. And your brain, the two halves of your brain entrain together to the differential frequency of the two frequencies. So if you played 80 hertz in your left ear and 100 hertz in your right ear, 80 from 100 is 20. So the two halves of your brain would both entrain to 20 hertz. And your brain would start functioning as if it's one brain rather than two brains. Okay? Mm-hmm. You really have two brains, not one. They talk to each other through the corpus callosum, but they work independently of each other, and the frequencies coming off of them are totally independent of each other. But when you sync the two halves together in one frequency, you have the higher mind states. Okay? So if you do laying on of hands, healing, your brain will start syncing together, and you'll start getting higher mind states. If you're channeling chi, your brain will start syncing to the frequency of the earth and sync together. And there's all kinds of things you can do that'll cause your hemispheric synchronization. And anyway, so I would go over to this girl's house, and I had a copy of Robin Monroe's HemiSync tapes on the little tapes that you used to have, and so she had a copy, and a bunch of other people had copies of that same Gateway Experience set of tapes, and so we would all, like, somebody be laying on the couch and somebody be laying on another couch. People would be laying on the floor all over the place. They'd all have headphones on listening to their own copy of Robert Monroe's hemispheric synchronization tapes, trying to get out of their body. It was like an out-of-body party where everybody was trying to get out of their body. Of course, it never worked for me. But anyway, I have been halfway out of my body one time. It scared the heck out of me. Anyway, after we finished doing this at one of her parties, everybody left, and she and I are sitting there together by ourselves. She's sitting on the opposite side of a card table, and she looks at me and she says, you have an imp jumping around on the top of your head. And I said, yeah, I know, because it was jumping around on the top of my head at the time. It never jumps around on the top of my head. It hasn't done it in my whole lifetime except for the one day. It just happened to be doing it that day. And so I knew by the fact that she not only described it as an imp, which is a small demon or a earth spirit, and she also described what it was doing. So I knew she could actually see it. Right. So then I was in Portland, Oregon, and my wife and I had some marital discord, and I ended up in the downtown jail that was called the Justice Center in downtown Portland, Oregon. And I had this cellmate, and he's in my book also, but he's sitting on the bottom bunk, and I'm sitting on the floor on the regular floor, concrete floor of the jail cell. And I was into Kriya Yoga at the time, and within Kriya Yoga, you're moving your awareness to each of your chakras, and in a down the front and up the back and down the front. You're going in this pattern, and you're doing bows, and you're doing side to side motions, and you're doing all these different things at the same time, trying to open up all your chakras to move along as a meditator, and become more enlightened or whatever. And so I'm doing this sitting on the floor, on the concrete floor of this cell, in this jail cell, and my cellmate is sitting on the bottom bunk. And when I finished doing my Kriya Yoga meditation, I opened my eyes and I look over at this guy's cellmate sitting on the bottom bunk. And he looks over me and says, you have a demon sticking its tail in your back, don't you? And I thought about it, and I was like, I moved my awareness to the middle of my back, and I could feel the sharp pain where it was sticking its tail into my back, but I could also feel the energy signature of the being around the sharp pain. And when I noticed that energy signature on the surface of my skin around the sharp pain, I knew that it was more than just a normal back pain at that moment. So I acknowledged mentally and verbally to the guy, yeah, I do have an attaching spirit there. I didn't know about the one on my back until he said something. When the little girl previously said it at her apartment about the one on my head, I already knew about that one before she mentioned it. And so, but I didn't know about the one on my back until the guy said something in that jail cell. So anyway, that's my attaching spirits. And so, do you want me to give you my third craft encounter, or do you want to go somewhere else?
No, I'm curious. So let's talk about when your wife got possessed.
Talk about what?
When your wife got possessed, and you almost spent 2 years in prison.
Okay. So,
how did all that come about?
So I was at the time we were living in Seattle, Washington, in Manassas, or not Seattle, Washington, in Manassas, Virginia. We were living in Manassas, Virginia, and I have to, in order to explain this story, I have to actually regress in time to give you some prerequisites to the story because you're not going to understand it. Okay. I went to. I'm actually going to tell you about the third craft encounter in order to tell you about that. So I was actually in Afghanistan, right? Mm-hmm. And I was finishing my third tour there, and I was not military. I was just a contractor. And I'll skip over a lot of that, but basically I got fired off this job, right? And I left Afghanistan about 16 days. In order to get your tax credit from being overseas, you have to be out of the country for 285 days of that year. Mm-hmm. And so when I got fired off this job, I left 16 days short of that 285-day time frame. So I had to go back out of the country for another 16 days to get my tax credit. So I chose to go to Iquitos, Peru to do the ayahuasca. So in order to get the tax break.
Right.
And so I went to Iquitos and I spent 19 days in Iquitos. And I went from Iquitos outside the city, so many miles, 6 miles or whatever, to this ayahuasca retreat, and did the ayahuasca twice. And then I went to another retreat, did a third time. And what happened was it opened me up like a can of worms psychically. Mm-hmm. So it's like I was like a super psychic, except when you're opened like that, it doesn't just open you up in your head like a psychic. The barriers around you also are breached. When you smoke like cigarettes or pot or do alcohol, the barriers that are immediately around your body are breached. But when you do hallucinogens like acid or ayahuasca, the barriers that are further away from you, that are like outside the room that you're in, you have barriers that are way away from you that are surrounding you also. Those get breached. So at that point, after I was after I came back from Peru, my wife was in Manassas, and we would be in our apartment, and I would basically be under attack one day, spiritual attack, or all different kinds of things would be happening. I'll give you an example. My wife and I were laying in bed, half asleep, and the dogs are sleeping with us. We had 2 dogs at that time. And it's like somebody set off a hand grenade in the living room. There was no shock wave, but there was a lot of that explosive sound was very loud.
Mm-hmm.
And the dogs woke us up, and the dogs would jump up and they were barking their heads off because they all heard the sound, right? Okay. And my wife and I have both been around paranormal phenomena the whole 23 years we've known each other. Plus, she's deep into being around the paranormal long before I met her, and me also, right? But within that apartment, we'd hear and in many places we've lived, we've had all kinds of paranormal things happen, like rapping going up the wall and over the ceiling, in the ceiling, and all this stuff. But when I was opened up by the ayahuasca, I would hear knocking, but it's different. It's not like knocking on the wall like a spirit is trying to get your attention. It's more like something darker is trying to get in, but it's further away than the wall. It's further out. But the knocking is like deeper but louder, like something's banging on a surface trying to get in to where you're at. So when you're opened up using the ayahuasca, you can see what's going on the darker level. You can see all this stuff, but it can see you also. It's a two-way street. Mm-hmm. So there were things trying to get in, and there were things that were getting in. And there was a day when I was under spiritual attack, so much so that I just left everything. I was going to be like Kwai Chang. I was going to walk the earth and just forget everything. I literally walked away from everything. I had my wallet and maybe a credit card and a debit card and my wallet, my shoes and keys, and that's it. I had nothing else on me. I walked away, and I was just going to leave my wife and everything. And I walked for like 3 hours. I stopped and sat down for an hour, and I thought about it, and I changed my mind and walked home. I literally I was gone for 6 hours, so I was walking for like 5 hours of that day. And so that day, when I got back, my wife was acting very strange over a 2 or 3 day period, and she was cursing at me and saying all kinds of things. It's in my book, but she would just start saying things negative and just keep going and going, and all kinds of strange things were happening. And so anyway, I don't want to go over all that because it's just a lot of stuff. But there was, when I was on, I'm going to go over a few different events because it's important. So there was a girl, a little girl, she was like 4 years old. She was standing in the courtyard of that Manassas apartment that I came back to from after doing the ayahuasca. And she was standing there looking at me, and she was holding a boxer puppy. And the boxer, she wasn't actually holding the puppy. It was on the ground, but it had a leash on, and she was holding the leash, and she was using all her body weight to keep this little puppy from getting loose, because it was angry at me and it was barking at me and trying to attack me. And but she's like this little 4-year-old, just like using all her weight and energy to try to keep this thing from attacking me. But her eyes, I was seeing her body like it wasn't her physical body. It was like her astral body or causal body or her mental body, one of her other bodies that's not her physical body is what I was seeing. And it looked to me like her physical body. So, but I know it wasn't her physical body because her eyes were moving around in her head really fast. And I knew intuitively as I was looking at her at that symptom of her eyes moving around really fast that she had an attaching spirit. So there was another point where I was in a court building, this was after the exorcism possession thing with my wife. I'm going to the future, and then I'm jumping around because it's easier to put it all into context if you do it this way. So I was in reference to that exorcism thing with my wife. I ended up having to go before a judge, right? So I'm sitting in this relatives and friends and so forth that were there to support them when they go in to see the judge. And only the people who were accused of committing crimes, their eyes were moving around, but the people who were not accused of crime, their eyes were all normal. So it was like we're all of us criminals, their eyes were moving around. So anyway, so the day that I'm going to go back now to the day I was walking around those 5 hours. So during those 5 hours of walking around, I was looking around at all the people driving around and walking on the street, and every single person I saw in every car and on the street, everybody's eyes were moving around really fast, just like so. It's like 100% of the people had attaching spirits that I was seeing, and so now I'm going to take you to the actual. Hold on a second. I need to go let my dog in this room. Hold on, just 1 second. Go ahead. Yes. All right, I'm back. I had to put my dog in the bed with my wife. Anyway, so all right, where was I? The exorcism. So after walking around the street for 5 hours and seeing all those people with their eyes, and I came back and my wife. I sat down. We only had a 1-bedroom apartment at the time, so my computer was in the living room, and I'm sitting in a rocker recliner in front of my computer, and I'm working on the computer. TV's on, and my wife is sitting to my right, and she's drinking wine. She has a huge red mug, which she still has, and she has it full of ice and full of wine. And she's sitting there with the wine, doing whatever she's doing. I'm not really paying attention to what's on the TV. I'm just working on my website on my computer. And I look over at her at one point, and the first thing I notice is she takes a drink of wine and then sets the wine down, and then she only lets it sit there for like 1 or 2 seconds, and then takes another drink and then sits it down. Leaves it sitting there for 1 or 2 seconds and then takes another drink and sits it down. And she keeps taking a drink, and she only lets the mug sit down for like no more than 2 or 3 seconds at most, and then takes another drink. I've never seen a drink like that in her whole life, not before or since that day. And so that's the first thing I noticed that's odd. And the next thing is that her eyes turn black. The whole eye turns black, both eyes, and then they turn red, and then they roll up, in the top of her head and turn white. And then they roll down, and then they turn black, and then red, and then white. And I don't know if that's the correct order. It could have been red, black, and white for all I know. Mm-hmm. So anyway, this happens over and over and over. And then at some point she stands up and she turns to the right and I think she took one step and starts to walk parallel to the front of the couch, and then she freezes. I don't even remember if she took a step or not, but she may have taken one step, and she's just totally frozen, like somebody, like the kids in the car after the alien craft showed up. She was absolutely totally frozen, not moving a muscle. And so I'm looking at her, waiting for her to. I know that she's got a spirit that's controlling her. And oddly enough, I'm not afraid of the situation. I should have been afraid. Somewhere during this whole scenario, I should have been afraid, but I never was for some odd reason. So anyway, she just stands there and stands there and stands there and stands there. I keep looking at her and looking at her, and I never do anything. I just keep watching her. She could have stood there for 20 or 30 minutes for all I know. I don't remember how long I let her stand there, but it was for a very long time. I wasn't going to interfere with whatever was going on. I was just watching out of curiosity and concern. And so at some point, I kind of got drawn into this scenario. So I got up, and I walked over to her. I grabbed her by the wrist, and I walked her into the bedroom, threw her on the bed, and I tried to hold her by the wrist while standing next to the bed. And she was thrashing around, and she, not knowing me very well at that time, assumed that I was trying to kill her. And being a martial artist, very highly trained martial artist, I would not need to take her in the bedroom to try to kill her, and I wouldn't try to kill her. If I wanted her dead, she would have been dead. Mm-hmm. So, but obviously I wasn't trying to kill her because she's still alive. I still live with her, and she was in there. I took the dog into her. She's in the bed. So anyway, she's thrashing around thinking I'm trying to kill her, and I'm having a hard time controlling her by her wrists with nothing else being held down. So I step onto the bed and I sit on her upper legs facing her and hold her wrists, and she's thrashing around. She's moving around with such force in her arms and all I'm doing is holding her wrists tight enough to not lose control, and using just enough force to counter her strength. And so, but she's using so much force to thrash with her arms, and with my counter force, it causes black and blue bruises all up and down her arms because of the force being used by her. And so, at some point, I decide. Hold on a second. Oh, there he is. Dog returned. So at some point, I let go of her because it seemed like she calmed down a little bit. So I let go of her wrist, and then as soon as I let go, 3 or 4 seconds later, she tries to take my head off, and she hits me like literally right on the edge of my eye, a couple millimeters in one direction, and I would be blind, half blind at this point. But she hit me as hard as she could in that spot right next to my eye. And so I grab her wrists again and control her for longer. And at some point she calms down. I let her go again. She tries to hit me again, and I block her attack with her arm. And so she starts screaming, and she's not screaming because she's afraid. She's screaming because she wants somebody to hear her screaming and come and rescue her. And she was never afraid during any of this, even though she claimed she thought I was trying to kill her. She was not afraid of me, and she showed no fear of any kind other than her thrashing. And so she seemed more angry than anything else the whole time. But she started screaming, and she screamed at the top of her lungs for like 2 hours. And during this 2 hours, I got kind of annoyed with the noise of the screaming. It was getting to me. So I put my hand over her mouth, but I didn't want to block her passage. I didn't want to stop her from breathing. So I made sure that I wasn't covering her nose, and I wasn't pressing down or anything. So I was just barely touching her skin, covering her mouth, trying to muffle the scream, just for like maybe 5 minutes. And during the time that my hand is over her mouth, I think I must have used my left hand because it doesn't quite work with my right. And there was a space between my pointing finger and my middle finger, and within that space, I started seeing blood spattering coming from her skin. My wrist or my hand was not moving at the time, so I knew there was nothing I was doing to cause a cut on her lip. And so I moved my hand off of her mouth, and there was a cut that was forming across her lip that was like about an inch long, and it just like formed out of nowhere across her lip with nothing causing it. And she was bleeding from this cut, but it just formed from nothing, from no strike, no nothing. It happened while my hand was barely touching her mouth, and it continued while nothing was touching her mouth. And so at some point, her eyes roll up into the top of her head, and she falls back on her back, and she stops breathing. And I look at her, and I notice there's no chest movement, there's no stomach movement. If a medical person had walked in the room and looked at her, they would have probably immediately walked over and taken her pulse, because they probably would have thought she was dead, just like I did. And so I literally thought she was dead. So I got off of her upper legs and moved myself to the bottom of the bed, and I'm watching her, and she's not moving. She's not breathing. She's not moving. Her eyes are rolled up in the top of her head. She's stiff as a board, no movement of any kind. And I sat there for maybe a minute or two, or maybe even 3 minutes, with her not breathing and stiff as a board. And then all of a sudden her eyes roll down out of the top of her head. She sits up, and she looks up. She looks at me with her eyes back. Or I think what happened was she just lifted her upper body up. Her eyes then rolled down out of the top of her head next. And then she looks at me, and she realizes I'm no longer sitting on top of her. So she jumps up out of the bed, runs out of the apartment, or out of the bedroom, then out of the apartment, then downstairs, and goes into this our neighbor's apartment. And without her telling them to, she calls the police. The police show up, and I tell them the whole story that I just told you. And the policeman doesn't believe a word I've said, and they take her away in an ambulance to the hospital and me in cuffs to the jail. And then in the jail, that's where things really start getting weird. Let's see. So I can't tell you everything that happened in jail, because it just takes too long to tell the whole story. But
right.
I'm going to skip to where I was. It was like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I'm in this cell, and these 2 cops come walking in the cell. They unlock the cell door, and they walk into the cell. And they've got their street uniform on. And they're not guards. And normally in most jails, a cop in a street uniform would never walk into the jail cell, because unless you're in the lockup, the hold up in the hold when you're like first put in there, they might walk into that cell, but not after you've already been processed in the jail. You wouldn't be, no cop with a gun would ever walk into a cell like that unless you're out in the middle of nowhere, jail, because, a criminal could grab the cop's gun, right? But these two cops walk in the cell and they're dressed like they just came off the street. Everything normal, including their guns. And they grab me and take me out of the cell, out of the building, out of that area and out of the building, and put me in a car, and they drive me somewhere, and it's a long ways away, or they could have driven around the same building 50 times and then back in the same building for all I know. That part of Manassas is very dark, and you see there's like street lights every once in a while, but a lot of it's pretty dark. And so unless you're like looking out the front of the car, like where they're going, you have a hard time following where they're taking you. And I was half asleep at the time, so I don't know where they took me. But it took like 30 minutes, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour of driving. And then we drive into another building, get out of the car, and they take me into this other building and drop me off. And have you ever seen the TV series 60 Days In?
I believe so.
So it's that TV series is shot in Nye County, Nevada, and the sheriff used to be on Live PD occasionally. He wore a cowboy hat. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's the sheriff of that county that the TV series 60 Days In is shot in. And what they do is they take regular people who are stupid enough to play a criminal, and they pretend to be a criminal, and they put them in a regular jail facility, and then they spy on all the criminals, and then they take them out, and the man or woman who's pretending to be a criminal reports back to the sheriff about all the criminality that's being done in the jail cells. They're in the jail facility, so that they can, charge the people with even more crimes. So, anyway, if you've ever seen that TV series, there's the facility they have there in Nye County, Nevada. The jail facility is the facility they took me into looked exactly like that, except there were some differences. The first difference I noticed was there was nobody in there. I mean, nobody. There wasn't a single prisoner in this facility. I was the only one. Mm-hmm. And the second thing I noticed was it was like somebody manufactured the facility 10 seconds before I walked in. There was no scratches on anything, nothing. It was like it had just been manufactured literally 30 seconds earlier. There was no dust on any surface. You could have eaten off the floor. It was perfectly clean. It's like it had never been used, brand spanking new. And I was the first person to go in there, right? So after I'm and the next thing that's different was the bottom of the facility, on the bottom floor, in that facility, there's the one in 60 Days In, or any similar facility, you have tables where the guards come out, they all come out of their cells on the bottom floor and on the second floor, and then they go down and they eat their meals on these steel tables and talk to each other, right? And so in this facility I'm in, it doesn't have those tables. Instead, it has these pods that are on that bottom floor. And the pods, one of those pods is where I was stuck into. I wasn't stuck in a normal cell on the side of the facility, on the top floor or the bottom floor. I wasn't stuck in any of those cells that are on the edge of the facility with the opening in the middle. I was stuck in a pod that was in the middle. where those tables would normally be, where there would normally be tables, right? And this pod is like almost like a fuller dome, one of those domes made out of triangles, but it's not made out of triangles. It's made out of two pieces of steel, and it's riveted together on the inside, but it's literally only two pieces. And so there might be a third piece with the toilet or something, but basically it's mostly just 2 or 3 or maybe 5 or 6 pieces at most, and total. And so there's a door on the front, and the door has a window that's about, if you take your hand and put it in front of you, it's about that wide, and it's about maybe 3 foot tall, 3 or 4 foot tall. In the doorway, there's a window there, a vertical window that's about the width of your hand. And in these windows, they had like strips of plastic, like embedded in the window. And when you would look outside and move your head side to side to see what was out there, this plastic thing would like play trips on your head, but it would cause something strange in your head. I don't remember exactly what it was doing, but it was odd. But there's all kinds of weird shit that happened to me, or weird stuff that happened to me in this facility. And it was a lot of mind control stuff. This is basically what happened for 6 days.
Right.
And I'm going to give you some examples. There was a whole bunch of things that happened, but I'll give you some of them. Okay. There was a point where I was let out of my cell by a guard. I was kept in the pod for 6 days, and I was only let out of the pod for one like 30-minute period or 2 or 3 hour period, and that was it. The rest of the time I was in the pod. Okay, so this guard came to the pod, opened the door, or unlocked the door, let me out. I stepped outside. The guard's standing no more than 10 to 15 foot from me. And I'm looking across the way to the cells that are on the wall on the opposite side of the facility. And there's one of the things that was unique about the facility that was, I've never been in. I've been in a number of jails, right? Mm-hmm. But I've never been in a jail like this one. At this point, there were other prisoners, but there was only like maybe 6 prisoners in the whole facility. This facility could have handled 300 or 400 people, but there was no more than 6 prisoners total at any given point in the whole facility besides me. Okay, and they were all very dark-skinned black people. There were no whites, there were no Hispanics, there were no light-skinned blacks. There were only half a dozen men, and they were all very dark-skinned black. It was like I was suddenly in Africa, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was a man like that who was in a cell pretending to be a cellmate, a prisoner, and he's looking through the window, that little window that I told you was on the door, and he's just looking around, and all of a sudden he pushes the door open in his cell and walks out of the cell like he's not really a prisoner, and he looks over at the guard and says, "Same time tomorrow?" And the guard goes, "Yeah, same time tomorrow." And he walks out of the facility. He walks to his left, turns to his left, and walks out of the facility and is gone, totally gone. He's just pretending to be a prisoner, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I was sitting in my cell, one of the things I noticed was they were playing some kind of audio through. The back of the cell bench that I was sitting on was in the back of the pod, and that's the widest part of the pod. The front part of the pod is less wide, and you have some steel wall that is transitions from the wider part to the lesser wide part. And on the right side, you had where the steel wall was going from the wider part to the less wider part, you had a wall there, steel wall, vertical wall that had holes. It had a bunch of holes in it, like you could put a speaker behind it and have sound coming through it. And they would play this audio that was coming, I assume, out of that, something behind those walls. And it would be a guy saying things. It was really strange. Anyway, behind that wall, I noticed a red object. It was a red light that was flashing on and off behind this wall. And I made an assumption, a logical assumption, because kind of trippy things were happening to my head while I'm in this facility. And I could go spend a lot of time talking about what happened. I'm skipping a lot of things, but there was a lot of strange things happening in my head that happened in that facility that I've never experienced before or since. And so I assume that these effects on my head were being caused by some invisible ray that was coming from this electronic device behind this wall, where the front of it was red, flashing on and off light. That's all an assumption on my part, and that assumption might be true or it might not be. That might just be something they're making up so I sound crazy, right?
So is all this in the book that you're writing, that you've been working on?
It is.
All right, and when are you close to a release date? Because we are close to the top of the hour, and it's been a great interview. Loved having you on. We're going to be talking about Veterans Day for the third hour, so we're going to let you go. When's your book? Do you have a projection for when your book's going to be released?
No, because I'm sort of a mind. If it gets released, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't have an agent, and I've been looking around for an agent. I probably will never get an agent.
I got you.
So I'll probably end up self-publishing it, but then I got to figure out how to self-publish it. And
you can self-publish on Amazon, actually.
Oh, I know. I've done a lot of research.
Yep. And
Sure.
Where can folks find out more information about your experiences and about your life? Because you have had an interesting life between your acting and your being a stuntman and hypnotherapy and all your paranormal experiences.
Well, one way I've done, this is like the 23rd interview I've done.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a link to 20 interviews on my website. So if they go to profoundstates.com, and at the top, in the middle, on the left side, it says Mike Beaver's radio broadcast interviews. So they can listen to 20 other interviews besides this one. And they can also click the link on the right side to read excerpts from the book. And our one excerpt, there's an excerpt about the before the space shuttle launch, Cape Canaveral encounter. There's an excerpt about that in the book, and there's also the index is there as well, so they can see the index. And my email address, you can get to me through the website, and if you click on certain things. So that's it.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for coming on, Mike. And it's time for a break.
Yep.
And when we'll come back, we're bringing in Arnold, and we're talking Veterans Day. So stay tuned.
You are listening to S4 on Spreaker.com.
Welcome back to S4 with your host, Eric Cooper.
And welcome back to S4. Oh, it's gonna snow.
It's not.
So we have Arnold with us for last hour. Yeah.
Montana's got a blizzard going through it right now.
Yeah.
Hard one.
So, folks, in 3 days, what day is it?
The 8th.
It is the 8th of
is.
November.
Wednesday. I know you're old, but like you should have this days of the week thing down.
What
still.
day is November 11th?
Wednesday.
Oh my God! It's Veterans Day.
Yes, it is. Man, you're fun to screw with tonight.
The day, if you have an ID card, you can go get a free meal. But yeah, no, it's Veterans Day.
Where America eats.
Huh?
Where America eats.
Where America eats. Yeah.
Well, where they used to eat before Corona.
Yeah.
But hey, you guys can still, if you are a veteran and you have your card and everything, you can still get takeout from a lot of these places, though. They are still offering it.
Absolutely. I'm still looking for one. I don't know where we're going to go.
Friend.
We'll figure it out. We've got 3 days.
Yeah. Friend, check your local newspapers, check Facebook. They'll all have the different deals on that are for everywhere.
And there's a lot of different grocery stores and littler establishments, too, that do things like free coffee or free cookies or stuff like that as well.
Oh, I'll definitely go get my free coffee, damn it. But what's weird, for the last 2 years, I've gone to Anthony and Cheyenne's school for a Veterans Day ceremony. I was asked to go talk to, oh my God, when I think it was Anthony's class. His teacher wanted me to come talk to the kindergartners. I'm like, okay, cool. Got me informed straight. And as I walk into the classroom, his teacher goes, "Oh, come outside for a second. I've got a favor to ask." Well, as I walk into the school, I notice another class filing into the cafeteria. Like, okay, they must be doing something else. Well, come to find out, his teacher had combined both kindergartners' classes into one, and I wasn't just talking to Anthony's class, I was talking to both of them. That would have been nice to know, because I don't like talking. Yeah, no. So, yeah, that was, and now all the schools are, they're I don't know if any of the schools are doing Veterans Day ceremonies or anything, because they're all online now.
They can, yeah.
Yeah, most of the schools, well, at least the schools in our county wouldn't be doing anything, especially in-person anything. None of them are actually back in person yet.
So, how's Arnold been doing?
Okay. So
okay?
far. Yeah. It's just getting cold. Like you said earlier.
We're expecting snow up here tomorrow.
They had a pretty good freeze where the roads iced up out here. It was this morning. It's been the first time it's done that around here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So looking in the clear sky, we still need a telescope.
We do.
We do.
I want to go back to Veterans Day for a second.
Okay.
There is a story that it floats around Facebook all the time. Because here in the U.S. it is Veterans Day.
Mm-hmm.
For Canada and Britain, it is Remembrance Day.
Right.
We don't have Memorial Day, so we celebrate all service members, those who came home and those who didn't, on November 11th. The way we do that, one of the biggest ways, is the poppy.
Right.
So there's a story that's been going around, and I honestly don't know where it starts, like where it started. And it's about a veteran selling poppies. Now, we sell poppies in Canada to raise money for our veterans.
Okay.
So, the weekends leading up to November 11th, you will see Sea Cadets, Army Cadets, and Air Cadets walking around with these little small white trays with a little coin thing in the middle and hundreds of poppies in the tray.
Mm-hmm.
And they will walk up to you and ask you if you would like to buy a poppy. It's by donation, and if you don't have the money, they'll even give you a poppy just to have it on someone's shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the poppy, there is a story behind it. Women are supposed to be wearing the poppy on their right side. The red represents the blood of all those who gave their lives. The black in the center represents the mourning of those who didn't have their loved ones return home. And the green leaf represents the grass and crops growing and future prosperity after the war destroyed so much. The leaf should be positioned at 11 o'clock to represent the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the time that World War I formally ended. A lot of people are worried, and this is why this story goes around so much, that these younger generations won't know that because they don't teach that in schools.
No, they don't.
When I ask my kids why we celebrate November 11th, they can't give me an answer. Their school does not teach.
No, it started with Armistice Day.
So, if you ever see someone wearing a poppy, make sure it's there on their right breast, and if you can, stop and tell them the story of why they wear it, because most people don't understand why they wear those. Mm-hmm. I know that some people in the United States do sell poppies. Some of the, not VAs, the Legions.
Legions.
Yep.
Yeah.
The American Legions do sell poppies.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, support them and buy one off them.
I just joined the American Legion.
Did you?
Yeah.
Which one? Cedro?
American.
No.
No?
National.
Oh, National? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't think we have an American Legion up here anymore.
No.
No.
Concrete, unfortunately, couldn't keep theirs going.
Yep.
But I think they just merged with Cedro.
And I brought Arnold on. One, because, after Desert Storm, we hadn't really talked much when I joined the Army. Yeah, with Arnold.
No, I kept kind of in touch with your mom and dad through that, but not, personally, no.
Yeah, so when I came home from Desert Storm, which for us it was Operation Positive Force. It wasn't Desert Storm. They pull everybody out of Kuwait and they pull us in just as a force to keep Saddam from coming back in. But I came home on leave, and Arnold was the park ranger for Lopez Island. I can't remember what park were you in?
It's Spencer Spit.
Yeah, that's Spencer Spit. There you go. And so, I had a nice break because I went out to your cabin for 3 days?
Yeah, something like that.
And we just drank wine coolers and talked about old times.
Yes.
I mean, literally, it's probably the nicest break I had. So, I like hearing familiar voices from those times.
Well, and also, Eric, if you go back before that, when you were going into the Army and stuff, I went with you, your mom and dad, to take you down to get on the bus or whatever, because we stopped at a few places along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the one store we rode the little machine out in front, and the lady told us to come get off. You know, the little horse thing out front.
I could see us doing that.
Yeah. Your mom and dad was like, really, guys? And I'm like, hey.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think you're already gone. Because when I went to basic training, I broke my foot in basic and had to come home for convalescent leave. But I think you'd already left.
Yeah, because I spent while you were gone. I was staying at your house going through the Park Ranger Academy. I was staying in your room.
Right.
At your house.
And, yeah, so they sent me home for a month in a walking cast. Well, I took that literal. So I was walking around town. And I remember these punks. I'm wearing an army coat. And these punks started following me down Fir Hill and throwing pine cones at me. I'm like, huh, really? And because I had a crew cut, obviously, because I was in basic. And I can't do a lot. I mean, I'm still hurt. I'm still in a walking cast, so it wasn't like I was going to try taking on like 4 kids. Not quite kids, but yeah. And yeah, just memories. So yeah, folks, if you see a vet, and I'm sorry, but if this goes for any time, not just Veterans Day, but if you see a vet and they're by themselves, buy them a coffee. I know they'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, Eric, that kind of goes, while we were homeless, living in our car down at the rest area, I was coming out of the restroom one night with my wife, and a gentleman stopped us and started talking to us, and I mean, he seemed nice, and I just started talking to him a little bit more, and throughout our conversation, and like the next day, I found out he was a Army vet. And here he was, homeless, sleeping in his car in the rest area. And I thought it was bad enough that here my wife and I, with her being disabled, was doing that, but someone who had, gone over and fought whatever for our country and stuff and was not taken better care of and stuff. It just got to me, but we became real good friends and we watched out for one another. And like you said, I mean, it doesn't take much to say hi, buy them a cup of coffee, buy them food if they need it. But we watched out for one another, and throughout the whole process, we're in our apartment. He should be getting into an apartment here, hopefully early next year. But right now he's at least off the street. They've got him in, not veterans or anybody, but somebody seen his article in the paper we were in and got him staying in a motel in Tacoma. So, but like you said, we always, if going back to the poppy, when they start selling them, we've always went up and donated money and stuff because my family, my uncles, another farther back were in the service and stuff. So, yeah.
I'm not sure what the stats are, if they've gone up or down, but I know we were losing 22 veterans a day to suicide. And honestly, if you get to that point, call the Veterans Hotline. For sure. It's Veterans Day, and I really don't like talking about this on a somber note, but it is what it is. And for the fact that we have, so I know a lot of the veterans up here in East Skagit County, there are veterans that are homeless, but they're not really homeless. They're houseless. They live in the woods. They prefer to live in the woods. They have the means to get an apartment or a house, but for a lot of them, they just don't want to be around people. And I can't say I blame them. But the homeless rate, I'm afraid, with the pandemic going on, is going to get worse. And not only do you need to watch out for everybody, but watch out for your veterans. Because I think, what is it? 1%? And I'm probably way off, but I think only 1% of the population serves in the military. You can look it up. So I was watching a Veterans Day, for 2020, a Veterans Day video on YouTube. And I forget we have a Space Force now, because they actually included that. But, the military has the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, and now the Space Force. And I'm not sure what the numbers for the Space Force are anymore. What do you got?
Less.
Less than 1%?
Because there's 330 million people in the U.S.,
mm-hmm.
and 1.3 million people are active duty serve military.
Yeah.
There are 800,000 reserve forces, but that still doesn't add up to...
No.
You need 3.3 million in order to get to the 1%.
Mm-hmm. So when you add the veterans in there...
Frick. I don't know. They're not going to have a list of those, honestly.
For numbers, probably
yeah.
not, no. So yeah, I'd say even including your veterans, you're still only going to be at a 1% for the population. If you add the active duty plus those that served.
Well, that's just messed up. When you looked up Armed Forces America,
mm-hmm.
Space Force is first now.
That's the newest.
Like, how do you go from not being non-existent to being in front of everybody?
Because they got the Star Trek emblem, remember? Oh.
We laugh now, but you can just wait. One of these days, when that alien invasion comes, we'll be relying on that Space Force.
No, they ain't got me ready.
Huh.
What?
I've never... there are a lot more parts of the Armed Forces for America in here than just what we know.
What's that?
What do we get?
Well, because they include... So... There's the United States Space Force, United States Armed Forces, which encompasses the Navy, the Marines,
mm-hmm.
Army, and Air Force. But then there's also the Department of the Air Force. There's the Department of Defense. They are their own entity.
Right.
United States Central Command, the Continental Army, European Command.
Okay. European Command is Army and Air Force. So I was in the European Command when I was stationed in Germany.
Okay.
So when they're saying European Command, that's your command structure. That's all there is. So yeah, it looks like a lot more, but your branches are actually just the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, and now Space Force. So yeah, they're all going to have their own designators, like what you see on the internet.
Yeah.
The Department of Defense, that's the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And those are all staff. Those are all going to be staff structures. And that includes your civilian contractors. That includes... there's thousands that work just in the Pentagon itself. Okay. But your only branches are the 5. Or 6 now. And then, of course...
Well, yeah, because you gotta... You include the Coast Guard.
Yeah. So, the Coast Guard is actually in Kuwait as well. Coast Guard's not just...
Yeah, it's 6.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you got the reserves and the National Guard. Which National Guard falls under state, reservists fall under federal. And they're all veterans.
Absolutely. Friend, let me just start by saying thank you to all our veterans.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
You're very welcome.
Friend, I'm not buying you coffee, though. Just come over on Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay.
You can do that.
I'll make you coffee.
So,
Cheap.
this is going to sound awkward. I think I do this every Veterans Day when we do the show. I've gotten better when people say thank you for serving. And it's not that we are, what's the word I'm looking for? We appreciate it. It's just awkward to be thanked for service, because for most of us it's not service, it's something we did. I mean, everyone's got their own reasons for joining the military, whether it's for the GI Bill, whether it's just for the adventure, whether it's just for the patriotism. Everyone's got their reasons, and that's something I always ask my soldiers anytime they came in. When we had new soldiers come to the unit, I'd ask them, why did you join? And, some of it was for the education. Some of it was for, and it still happens occasionally. It was go to the jail or go to the military. Okay, I didn't think that was legal anymore, but for some of them that is kind of an option. And some of them, especially after like 9/11, a lot of people, they just wanted to go get blood. That was really it. They wanted revenge. Is that a good reason? I guess it's as good a reason as any. But, yeah.
I'm not saying it's a good reason. But there is those people out there that are really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more constructive than what they could do here.
True.
Just saying.
Well, until you get the random one that sneaks out off base and goes and slaughters innocent villages. And that's happened.
Yeah. But like Charles Manson, I think he could have made an excellent commander. Like, I'm just saying, he probably could have convinced the other side to fight for him.
Who?
Charles Manson.
Oh,
he was good at convincing people to do things.
Yeah. Hey, ISIS.
A little bit of boot camp. He might have been good at this.
But wasn't he also the one that was known for, killing his cellmates? So, I mean, probably not the greatest idea.
It wouldn't be a problem if we didn't put him in a cell.
Holy crap. Okay.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry, Charlie.
And they're also the ones that are going to be given a vaccine to see if it works.
I don't know if they're going to be the first, though. We got some prisons that...
Do you know how many anthrax shots I got that I shouldn't have gotten?
Absolutely.
And the smallpox shot I got in 2003 before I went to Iraq?
But I think there's some prisons that are doing that, too.
Maybe. So what do you think about Oregon?
Organs? Wait.
What do you think about Oregon?
As a
legalizing or decriminalizing drugs?
Oh. They're crazy.
I don't know. It has worked all across Europe. It really depends on how much it clashes between the state and federal governments. Because they can decriminalize it all they want, but if federal gets involved, you're still going to jail.
Okay, I gotta tell you, the perspective of my 13-year-old son
Okay.
When he figured out... No, it was John, so my 12-year-old son. When he figured out that they were decriminalizing all drugs in Oregon, he said, huh, well, that's cool, because at least we'll get rid of all the druggies in Washington, because they're going to move there. So I'm wondering if it's the only state that does it, if they are going to have a mass population of drug users and a huge increase of drug-related issues just because people will be going there instead of other states.
Escape from New York comes to mind.
So they get caught and they can't afford the $100 fine.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't pay the fine, do you go to jail?
I don't know how that works.
So,
actually,
But I thought they were actually pulling people out of jail that were in for only drug offenses.
yes,
that's what I read.
So they're doing that, and then they have to finish a program.
Okay.
So they're going to rehab, all of them.
So in that sense, maybe not such a bad idea.
well, I mean, we have a massive overpopulation of people in our penal system, so maybe this is a way that they figured out to kind of even it out. I mean,
they put the violent criminals in.
Right.
You know.
It's honestly one of those things where it's just kind of watch and see. Because there's so many different directions it could go.
It's going to be a watch and see for the next few years anyway.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, everybody was freaking out when, like, Washington and Colorado decided to legalize weed. And everybody was like, oh my God, this is never going to work for whatever reason. And it seems to be working all right.
A lot of us were on Facebook putting up memes and jokes.
Right.
Yeah, Pop-Tarts.
Well, it's just because that was also the first year Seattle went to the Super Bowl. And
coincidence?
Yeah, so like you could have a bowl at the bowl.
Oh, God.
Oh, weren't they against the Broncos, too? Hey, wait a minute. I see a correlation here. I mean, I don't know. It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. It's again. I think it's going to definitely be a wait and see what ends up happening thing. And then see how many states go along with it on the next election.
Yeah, but they just sent the National Guard into Oregon as well for protests.
I don't think they're allowed to do hard drugs while they're on duty.
No. But I mean, I'm saying, look how chaotic Oregon is right now in general, and then they're going to open this up.
Yeah, but at the same point, we could say the same thing about a lot of different states right now, is how chaotic things are. And if a person's doing drugs, they're going to be doing them anyways.
Yeah.
So right now, they're doing them anyways.
It's just the difference of where they go.
Yeah. So if they have it a safe environment for you to do it versus any old street and leaving stuff anywhere, it might actually be a better idea because they're going to do them anyhow. So we might as well give them a section to do it and a proper place to dispose of their needles instead of in our kids' playgrounds. Yeah.
So the way I read it, but I don't know, and I don't know if I was correct, but the way I read it was instead of taking them into holding, they will hand them a $100 fine with a court date on it that they are forced to appear. And from that, they will have to go straight into rehab from that court date.
So it's not necessarily decriminalizing, it's just not
Getting
putting
them.
you into jail for it, it's putting you into a rehab system instead.
Getting them help.
But, like anyone in a social services point of view would say, can't give help to someone who doesn't want it.
No, absolutely.
So you're forcing these guys to go into rehab.
Which is
a
a
lot of
waste.
them for nothing.
It's going to be a waste of taxpayers' money.
Yeah, because rehab's not like jail. You can walk away.
Yeah.
Not if it's court ordered.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck there.
Kind of, except for are they going to actually put them in jail then if they don't go? If they don't finish it. They have, there's nothing in there that states what the punishment is for not adhering to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've been doing that in Denmark for years. And it seems to have actually helped out the population a lot over there. So, I mean, based off of other countries that have things that are legalized, it might actually end up working out, but I'm not sure.
It's going to be an interesting next few years.
Yeah.
2, no, it's going to be an interesting next 10 years.
Decade.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. So what's your thoughts on all that, Arnold?
I think with Oregon, when they do this, I don't think it's just going to affect Oregon. I think it's going to affect the bordering states, because just like Idaho, when the alcohol drinking age was lower than Washington, where'd all the kids from Pullman and all that stuff go? To Idaho to drink, and then come back over. That, I think, what Oregon's going to do, if it works, great. If it doesn't, it's going to affect a lot of other issues. I also heard they're handing through people is Washington's already kindly looking to see how Oregon handles this, and possibly it happening here. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think if it does and Oregon works it out, I think they're going to 2 other West Coast states.
They're going to be the experimental
Well,
state.
don't we already have one of those safe places?
Kind of. Kind of. We have a few harbors. Yes.
Yeah. And which is cool, when you go back to it, we already are handing out clean needles and stuff to people and stuff already, and asking them. I mean, I've been in places, restaurants when I've been in and seen free needle disposal areas, to people throw their dirty needles away.
Right.
And stuff. So it's kind of inching its way that way already, and like you said, giving them safe spots to do this stuff. And if it lowers the, helps with the people in our jails and stuff, and puts the really true criminals in, but
if I remember right, when they first did that whole clean needles thing, there was a story on either King 5 or Curo 7 where a lady went into a hospital and asked for a set of needles, and they refused. And it's because of her reasoning for wanting the needles. They asked her what she was doing, and she full out admitted it was for a crafting project. She didn't want to pay for the needles.
oh my God.
But hey, in her defense, my wife's into crafting. It's an addiction. So they really should have given them to her.
Okay, wait a minute.
You have a crafting addiction.
I have an entire holiday trailer full of crafts from the top to the bottom. I think that's a crafting addiction. Yeah, I do.
She started doing needlepoint.
I did, actually.
She's old now.
Wow. Whatever, cross stitch is awesome.
Is that what it is?
You can say whatever you want.
I thought it was needlepoint. I don't know these things.
No, needlepoint's the one that you do on the little doily.
See, you know that.
That was the test. Crafting addiction.
Hey, it's better than being addicted to other things.
Oh,
I'm cool
absolutely.
with my crafting addiction.
Absolutely. Like casinos.
Okay, so you gotta balance it out. I mean, 2-3 addictions at a time. Oh no. Okay.
So next week we do have round table.
Yeah.
Yay! Table of round.
Yep. And then is actually Native American history.
Can I be King Arthur?
Is it? Damn it. Okay.
Followed by American witches.
Aw.
You did see the conversation earlier tonight.
What?
I'm not helping you test how cold a witch's tit is.
Yeah.
So...
Very cold right now.
When do I get to do a show?
Huh? We talk about aliens all the time.
Hey now.
So we have you reached out to our next guest as far as her coming on Roundtable?
No, I have not. But hopefully she will be have the time open. I know she's very excited to come on the show. I hate this new Facebook. I can't find anything in this thing.
At least you have a Facebook. They
you know what? I'll find it on here quick.
Welcome.
So yes,
to the new censorship of
for our new listeners, for our listeners that used to be friends of mine on Facebook. Yes, Facebook did delete 2 of my accounts. You can still find me on.
He says Facebook. That, but he just doesn't like you people, and he deleted it.
No, really, Facebook thought it was in their best interest to remove Eric Cooper.
So yeah, one of our next guests will be Jill Shelley. She's a paranormal investigator, has been for 10 years, and owner of the Boyd House.
I have to look that up. I know the name.
It's in Stillwater, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Which there's a lot of things happening in Stillwater. That's a familiar name of a town.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what from though.
Which is really weird because it's a very small town. But
it's from one of those iconic movies.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can't remember which one.
The Hills Have Eyes.
No, that's Nevada.
Is it?
I think so.
Okay.
No.
The Hills Have Eyes? Isn't that the one they're the nuclear
freaky guys?
I thought that was Kentucky.
No, those are the blue people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, okay. They were ancestors of the people who were too close to the nuclear tests in Nevada.
Yeah, it's in Nevada.
Cute.
So, but so we're gonna have her on for her own show in
probably January.
Probably in January, and then hopefully she'll have time to come on to the roundtable next week.
Round of the tables.
So, do you have your questions ready, Arnold?
No, I was. Well, I have some other stuff going on that I've been thinking about, and then my son will all of a sudden chime in on stuff when we start talking and things. So it's like, okay,
you got a week.
Easy. Well, it'll be easy to do it. 3 times. I'm sitting there waiting for my wife to get off dialysis, so I got 4 hours to
right
do that and then stuff.
That's if we have power. We might have power next week.
We will have power.
Please don't say that. We've already gone 24 plus hours without powers.
Yes, we had a major windstorm and rainstorm last week, and
yeah, you guys got hit.
Oh God!
Oh yeah, and it got cold.
Yeah, because it wasn't just power. The power came on 4 hours before the internet came back on.
Yeah, that sucked.
Oh wow!
Because one of the trees took out the actual wave cables too.
See, and so here at the studio, they're like 5 minutes from my house, and I had power the entire time.
Oh, sure.
Oh, well, rub it in. Thanks. Sitting over here freezing. You know what? I'm just going to come and chill in your garage.
You know where
Did you say crotch?
Garage, not crotch.
No.
I think Izzy might have an issue with that.
Yeah, I think so.
It's one of those alien things, I think.
Oh, God.
Is that what it is?
Would you stop? Okay. S-4 listeners, I am not an alien. No matter how much they say, I'm an alien.
You are.
That's exactly what an alien would say.
Exactly. Absolutely. That'll make you a man in black, wouldn't
it? I wear black sometimes.
Okay.
I'm wearing black shorts right now. Yeah, no, the power grid here is a little wonky, but it's just the way it is. We receive our power all the way from across the river.
All the way?
Well, yeah, they ran lines over a river.
I can almost throw a rock to the river.
Over the river and through the woods to my grandmother's house.
That's your mother's house. That's their grandmother's house.
Oh, well.
No, like it's just, it was a weird way to run, especially since we do have lines running all the way up South Skagit. So, like, I would have thought they would have
connected to the lines that are right down the road instead of across the river.
Yeah, but how many trees fell down South Skagit? 5.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Either way, we're in one of those wonderful little
it's
places.
just a weird split because half of Cape Horn, if anyone looks at a map of Cape Horn, half of it is fed power from across the river and half of it's fed from South Skagit.
Oh.
But Wave
so
is
much more
completely fed from South Skagit.
Yeah.
So with that, when the big tree went down just outside of South Skagit,
It took down the wave cables.
and until they get the electrical cables handled, Wave's not allowed in.
That
They're
makes
not allowed to
sense.
fix anything. So
Yep.
it took a while, but the kids were pretty disappointed because it was back on before school.
Right before school. Okay, so they were like, "Yeah, no school today."
See,
And then it's
Arnold lives
like,
in Olympia.
back on.
And Olympia is the priority.
Well,
It's our capital.
Yeah,
I mean,
but think about when we all lived on Stanford Drive. How many times did you ever lose power there?
I don't remember ever losing power.
that's
We
because
did
we're on
once
the
and it was
hospital
for 5
grid.
minutes.
Do we?
Yeah, we're on the hospital grid there, so we're the first ones that always get it
Yeah,
back
but
on.
the hospital's got backup generators.
But
Yep.
they still make
They
sure
still
they're
make sure
running
that
at
the
5
hospitals
minutes
and
later.
that kind of stuff are up
They
first.
they are first in line whenever the
yeah.
wires go down.
Weirdly enough, it's hospitals, prisons, and
Well,
state
yeah,
buildings.
prisons make
That are
sense.
the
They don't
first
want those
ones.
guys getting out.
Well, but the best idea would just be to put in a failsafe where all the doors just lock and you can't unlock them.
Yeah, like that
Yeah,
makes
what
too
if
much
they're
sense.
out in the yard? Then it locks them out. Like,
They're not getting out of the yard either.
just saying.
That's why they have snipers on the roof.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Not to mention, when's the last time you knew of all the prisoners going into the yard during a thunderstorm?
It would decrease the surplus population.
You should never be a prison guard because you're going to let them go everywhere they should.
There's a lot of things I should never be.
That's true.
Okay.
We talked about this.
Yeah, that's
She
definitely
shouldn't
one of them.
be- there's just a lot. Friend. Like in charge of a radio show. No.
Hey.
Hey, what?
Hi.
Yeah, not even going to try and defend it, are you?
No, I'm not.
I can't wait for the December shows.
Me too. I love talking about Krampus and scaring the hell out of my kids. Right?
That too.
Keeps them...
I don't know. We talking
Calm
about
for a little
Krampus
while.
this year?
Oh, we should for a minute.
Krampus Claus is coming to town.
Yeah.
Woo.
And I know for a lot of people across the country and all countries, this is going to be a very different year.
Every holiday has been very different this year.
It has.
Yeah.
Christmas across a lot of countries, though, is the biggest one of the year.
It is.
And this
Yeah.
is the toughest one because there's already so many emotions tied up in Christmas.
Yeah. Well, you know, and for some, they put Christmas lights up in March just for the cheery aspect of it.
Oh,
Yeah, my
absolutely.
brother did that.
You know.
Absolutely.
He put his tree out in the front yard and dressed it up with flamingos.
Flamingos. Why?
Yeah, the pink tree.
Uh-huh. I don't like flamingos.
No, flamingos are freaky. They really are. They're like little alien swans.
You know all about aliens.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus.
You walk
So
right
what
into
are
that
alien swans like?
Flamingos. Didn't I just say that?
one. Oh, God.
Okay.
From what planet, Kayla?
Flamingar.
Flamingo.
Flamingar. In the fowl constellation.
Wow.
Hey, it makes more sense than other people I've heard. We're good.
Oh, wow.
I can't.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a tough year. We are in the home stretch, though. It's almost over. And
How about them Seahawks?
Oh, they totally
I
just-
should smack you right now. I don't want to talk to you.
That's why I'm across the table. Can't reach me.
It was a bad week. We'll come back next week stronger.
Yeah, it was. Who we playing next
Wasn't
week?
it a bad 2 weeks? I'm just saying.
You're not across the table.
Patriots. Woo!
Is Patriots next week?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, they're just going to win. I mean,
No, they're not.
The Rams. I think we play the Rams next week.
Oh, God.
Do we?
I think so.
I'm going to look at the schedule right now.
But hey,
yes,
we didn't get beat as bad as some other teams today.
No. Brady got his ass whooped.
Good.
It was hilarious.
I don't like Brady.
does?
He's retired.
Actually, the best meme I saw today was the Seahawks had a tough game, and then it had a picture of Brady, and it said, "Hold my beer."
Oh, God.
Anything you can do, I can do worse.
Okay.
So, on that note, folks, remember your veterans this week. It is Veterans Day on Wednesday. I think, yeah. Wednesday.
And hey, if you guys want to hear about anything specific this Christmas or anytime to the next year, let us know.
Yep, we are taking bookings.
Yeah, contact us on Facebook
for January
on our S4 page or through Forest Moon Paranormal, the group.
Yes.
You can reach us through either.
Yeah, that's how
Jill got a hold of us.
Yep.
So she'll be coming up in the new year, but hopefully we'll be able to get her on either for this round table or I'll talk to her about December's as well.
Sounds good.
So
get to know our guests and then bring her on.
Yeah.
All right. So on that note, stay warm, folks. Stay safe, and remember, keep your eyes to the skies.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight on S4, the official voice of Forest Moon Paranormal. You can contact S4 through our website at www.s-4radio.com or on Facebook. Make sure you give us a like on our page and join the Forest Moon Paranormal group. If you are interested in advertising, take a look at our packages and contact Cole or Eric at 1-360-999-2830. Again, thank you. And remember, keep your eyes to the sky.